Hi, how's everybody doing? It's Paul back again with another video, and yeah, it just never ever stops, does it? The Newcastle United machine, the wheel that keeps on turning. And today it's not the greatest news that I'm commenting on, because it came out this morning. I'm sitting there, I'm packing up, ready to go away on holiday, all optimistic, a little bit in a positive mood after a couple of, I don't know, a couple of weeks which just sort of drained a little bit of the life force out of me. You know, the excitement of looking forward to a new season, a Champions League season. It's not been without its frustrations, but I'm sitting there packing away, you know, happy as a pig in shit, as the old saying would go. And then up pops update from Newcastle United. I'm like, oh, great, right, stop what I'm doing here. What's the club saying? Go on. And I see the travelling party being announced for, obviously, this Asian tour. Now, on the face of it, I had a quick scan. Right, doesn't look very big. Quite a few kids in there. All right, Lewis Hall, brilliant, great. Yeah, great to see him back over the fucking moon. He's been training by himself, you know. So I'm sitting there thinking, oh, great. I'm looking for all the other names. Like, well, there's no Dubravka on there. Bit strange. Might have a transfer lined up. And then I cast my eyes up to the little blurb beside the main post, and I noticed that on that there is an update about Isak. Now, I mentioned about Dubravka, which I spotted straight away, but Isak's got a slight injury, so he won't be travelling. He won't be taking part in the game. So now, best case scenario for us is that, you know, he's okay, he stays, and he gets what? 1 or 2 games, a couple of minutes here, a couple of minutes there before the season starts. It's far from ideal at best. You know, he's missed a good chunk of pre-season, despite the fact he looked absolutely fine and dandy when it came to the Austrian training camp. No issues, no problems, no rumours, no murmurs from the club that there was any sort of issue there with Isak. You know, he's had the off season. Yes, he missed the Sweden games at the end of last season, but he was going to be right as rain. Anyhow, he sent him away. His head wasn't in the right space at Glasgow, despite the fact that he was in Glasgow and he could have sat in the stands and watched the game like Joe Linton did, for example. But he didn't. He was sent home. Then pictured doing some one-to-one training work alongside Lewis Hall, that we mentioned before, doing some fitness work. Fair enough. But now this, you know, and I'm a firm believer of, you know, there's no smoke without fire, you know. It's just absolutely farcical. We've let Callum Wilson go, which is fair enough. I agree with that decision. I thought it was the right one. I thought it was slightly overdue, if anything. I was expecting a few reinforcements in before now, 1 or 2 strikers at least. But it seems to me that we could be going into the season opener against Aston Villa if we're not absolutely fucking careful. We've just having a Sula up front, and although he's a cracking prospect, I love him to bits. You know, class and all that, he's not ready. He's not ready to start as the only striker, or striker if you want to call him, because I don't think he's one of these who, like, he starts out wide and then he eventually will come inside to be a centre forward. I just don't think he's ready. So really, we're going into the season with him and maybe Neve available. Gordon, square peg, round hole. He could play there again, and he just looks like a fish out of water. It's so maddening that, you know, we were supposed to be going into a season. We were told at the end of the last season, PSR, it's behind us, it won't affect us, you know, up to a reasonable amount. We're not talking batshit crazy, you know, like Chelsea have done, or Liverpool have done. But, you know, within reason, PSR shouldn't be a problem this time round. And yet we've brought in one, and we've shipped out, and we've reduced the squad, you know, the wage costs quite considerably. Haven't brought in anybody else, and now we're risking losing arguably our star striker, our best player in Alexander Isak. Now, strikers are literally rarer than an educated Mackem. You know, it's a difficult one to be able to find a really good, top-notch quality striker. We've had some greats. We've had some of the very best in world football. Your Shearers of the world, your Isaks of the world. We've had some good ones as well. You know, again, I'm not talking about off-field stuff, but the likes of Craig Bellamy was absolutely cracking. We've had Bar, we've had Cisse. You know, we've had some decent strikers. We've had some stinkers as well. There's no doubt about it. Your Andreas Andersons, your Stefan Givages, Cisco's, Luke's, etc, etc, etc. Absolutely and utterly fucking minging. So we've had a good selection, but we do know one thing, and that is that getting a striker is difficult. So when you've got a good one, it's imperative that you keep him. Isak has still got 3 years to go on his current contract. He's not happy. He's not happy about potentially how the club's handled his contract situation. I can respect that. I can understand that. You know, the club don't come out of it smelling of absolute roses. That's for certain. You know, he was expecting a contract by all imagination and all sort of stories and stuff like that you read. He was expecting something, you know, towards the end of the season. That didn't happen. Mitchell thought he was absolutely fine. He didn't need a new contract. There was other priorities, budget to keep, etc, etc. Mitchell's gone out, left us high and dry after under a year, and he's left an unsettled star striker in Isak. And you know, Eddie Howe spoke. He'll definitely be on this plane. I expect him to be on the plane. That was literally just days ago, and now it's like he's not. And people at the club, certain journalists as well, are still going along with the mantra, with the club line of, you know, he's injured and we don't think it's a good idea for him to travel over. And why I can understand potentially an injury that they themselves described as a slight injury. You know, I can understand them not wanting to take a risk, but it's a slight injury. And even if he can't play, with all the circus that's been around recently, the worry in amongst the fan base, you would think that somewhere along the line, they just think, you know what, come along, it's good for PR, it's good for morale, it's good for team building. And then when it comes to the meet and greets and the fan events and everything else, you can take part in that. You can spread the Newcastle United gospel over there, you know. If you've got to think these fans who are absolutely over there, you know, football mad, like a sponge, want more and more, and a lot of them who, like, you know, potential Newcastle United fans outright, they will want to see everybody. They'll want to see the Brunos, they'll want to see the Sandro Tonalis, they'll want to see the Alexander Isaks as well. So it makes no sense. It's a massive thing. The club keep ramming down our throats commercial income, growth of the brand, spreading the word across the world, having global fan base, and yet your star, your key player, your marquee man isn't on this trip when it's all about commercial. You can say, oh, fitness and this, that and the other. They could have had fitness by playing fucking York City. They could have had fitness playing Gateshead. They could have had fitness playing anybody in these aisles. But they've chosen to go over there, and it is first and foremost about bang for your buck, about, you know, sort of growing the commercial side of it. So I'm not buying what people towing, you know, the company line, as it were, are saying, what the club is saying. You know, don't insult people's intelligence, because it's like, it's obvious for everybody to see. He's had his head turned. Now, this may be driven by the agent. You know, it may be. At the end of the day, it's the agent's job to extract as much money as possible for his client, because he ultimately will also benefit off any signing on fees and possibly percentage of wages or anything else like that. He financially will be quids in the more that Isak is quids in, you know. And so far, you got to think, what, he had a couple of years in Spain. He's always sort of stayed a couple of years, be up to a couple of years now at Newcastle. It's just a worrying time. You know, there was worries, there was understandable concern from the fan base. And this is like just chucking paraffin gas on top of it. It notches it up an absolute peg or 10. And I think it's now time. You know, Eddie Howe said he was going to be on this trip. He was quite clear about that. He's going to be on this trip. He couldn't 100% guarantee he'd still be a Newcastle United player when it comes out the next season, because he can't guarantee that with anybody. You know, if somebody were to put in a batshit crazy bid for a Bruno or a Tonali, like the $1 Million Man used to say, every fucker's got his price. Well, maybe not quite like that, but you know, the general gist. And Isak's got his price. But why? Like, literally, it just feels like you're insulting the intelligence of the fan base by just saying, oh, it's a slight injury, that's why he's not involved. It's bullshit. You know it, I know it, everybody knows it. And they do owe the fans just to come out and have a straight and honest conversation. You know, there has been interest, or there has been inquiries, there are clubs circling, his agent is aware of interest, whatever it may be, and you know, he would like to discuss that. I think we all have just an adult conversation like that. Absolutely fine. You know where we stand, and the club can be planning for life potentially after Isak, or you know, planning just to keep him. Hopefully, I'll hope and pray he's fucking class, he's world class, that they keep him. But this is far from my ideal preparation. You're just making the pre-season thing into an absolute and utter circus. It's a joke. It can't go on. I'm sick and tired of it personally, and I'm not the only one. I've had multiple people messages and just say I'm absolutely sick and tired of this. I agree with you. I agree with you 1,000%. You know, I don't know who handles the PR at the club, but this is just not a good look. On top of the stadium situation, the training ground situation, the lack of communication, the issues since Amanda Staveley left, the lack of transfers in general, the PSR battles, the fact that we've not got training ground sponsors, training gear sponsorships, and this, that and the other. No update, a word off Darren Eales like he used to do, a yearly update. Same with the chairman. No word, no idea what's going on, no communication. Now, I'm not expecting them to sit there and go, oh, Paul, this is what they're doing. We have to this player, that player, that. Of course not, because there's sensitive business, you know, business and confidential information that would give, you know, the cat out of the bag with regards to pursuits of players. But there is some things that you can say and that you aren't saying. We constantly lowballing other clubs, you know, a player's worth 40 million, I'll put 25 million in. You know, these are the sort of tricks. If you remember what Keegan used to say back in the fucking dark days, oh, Sammy Hippier is available for 1.25 million. Oh, well, we'll offer $250,000 then. We'll offer $500,000 then. You know, it's shifting the goalposts. It's not being transparent. And one of the real bonuses and pluses after we got rid of the previous incumbent was the fact that communication improved 1,000,000,000%. And that is an important thing for Newcastle United fans. That communication and that feeling that you're being valued and that you are part of the team. And, you know, we've all had this thing, it's constantly Newcastle United, and the push the United thing to say we're all rolling in the same direction. We're all on, you know, in the same path. We've all got the same wants and desires, etc., etc., etc. It's time to sort of prove that a little bit, because, like I said before, it just feels like they are insulting the intelligence of the fan base. He's being left behind because of the transfer situation, because his head's been turned, whatever that means in you know, it's just modern football jargon and bollocks, to be honest. The top and bottom of it is, they're paying more money, and he quite likes that. And he thinks there's a greater chance of winning trophies over there. Of course there is, you know, but you're not going to get the game time. You know, we've done a lot for Isak's career, and he's done a lot for us as well. You know, let's not forget that for a second. Also, he's done an absolute load for us as well. But it just comes to a point, doesn't it? It comes to a point where, you know, at the end of the day, we need that clarity, and we need to have the confidence as well that by the time that game comes around against Aston Villa, it'll be all right on the night. We'll actually have a squad of players available. And the annoying thing is as well, and the worry for me also is that, you know, say the Isak situation continues on, say he gets a transfer away, what does that say to the other people, that your Brunos and your Tonalis of the world, who have signed up to the project, who was signed up and who was sold a certain vision, if then we're sort of getting rid of the star striker, what, you know, they might think, well, my future lies potentially elsewhere. You know, I'm ambitious just like he's ambitious, and they might think, well, yeah, I might have to follow suit. You know, so that's a worry, that's a concern, and I think the club needs to really go out and aggressively pursue players and just, you know, pay a fair price. There's no point about beating around the bush. If you want player X, pay the going rate before somebody else jumps in, because certainly when you're looking at strikers, they're so rare anyway that any sort of hesitation, any sort of delay in anything, and you'll lose out, as we've done repeatedly, time and time again, this pre-season, this off-season, this close season. We've lost out time and time and time again because we've just dillied and dallied, and we put a first bid and then we're going to put it in a second bid, and the clubs are in talk, and again all these fancy watchwords and progress and this, that and the other. And the top bottom of it is we just haven't found the line and got them over it enough. And that is on the chain of the entire team and management team. Whoever is left there in charge, everybody has to take their share of responsibility for what has been a pretty horrendous summer so far. There's still time to turn it around though. It's like, despite all the shit, there's still time to turn it around. It can still be made into a great window. A couple of key signings. Can we keep Isak? If we can't, then, you know, we need to sell him, but we need to sell him for the right price. And I've seen daft ones floating around, 120 million. Absolutely piss off. In a world where Jackson down at Chelsea's worth 100 million, that's what they're asking, and they'll stick to the guns and they'll get it. We're supposedly told to accept 120. Well, even last year it was 150 to start the conversations, and looking closer to 200 million. That was all the talk, all the time. So for me, it would be as close to £200 million up front in one go as possible. Sell him to Saudi, do what you want. And again, people say, well, Premier League will stick the noses in, fair market value. They had our pants once down with Valence at Maximum, which I still think was an absolute steal. I still think it was peanuts that they paid for him. But if you are after genuine world-class talent, and if that is where he ends up going, and if he is chasing the money, and we'll see that shortly, that's where he'll go, and that's where we'll make the most money. And I think £200 million is a fair deal on that. But I'd much rather have the player. I'd much rather have Isak, Asula, and another, whether that's Visser or whoever, to be honest. But we need to get bodies through the door. Time is ticking. We should have had all these players on this trip. It's a bonding opportunity. It's an opportunity to work into the system, to grow into the system, to understand the system, to understand Eddie Howe's way of working. And look, I tried to stay pretty calm, because I must admit I was pretty pissed off when I first read it. A few voice notes out to a few mates, and like, yeah, pretty raging, pretty pissed off. But you know, I've had a chance to sit down, a chance to reflect it, get a drink, sit down, and take in the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is that no player is bigger than Newcastle United. I vividly remember the Andy Cole situation, and I remember being absolutely gutted at the time as a youngster, but having the trust in the club, and the club delivered. There's no doubt about it. They pulled a rabbit out the hat. But back then there was more options, wasn't there? There was more options, there was more strikers, more quality. It's a different kettle of fish these days, but I trust the club in whichever way they go. I'm still 1,000% behind the ownership, 1,000% behind Eddie Howe. That doesn't change it, but you are allowed to question things when things like this happen. You know, you don't just have to be like, you know, like a sheep just following the flock. You know, you can just say, whoa, no. I'm swallowing something here. Yeah? And it ain't sweetness and light. It's a bit of shit. Possibly fucking bullshit. You know? If you think it, you've got to call it out. I've always, back in other days and these days on different channels, always said it exactly as I think it. And I honestly think at this moment he's had his head turned. There is interest, and it's whether they will pay the money that's on the price ticket. If it was Newcastle after him, they'd probably put in an offer of about a quarter of his value. But No, in all seriousness, it needs sorting out. There needs to be communication, and we need to be able to move on, because this just leaves a bad taste in your mouth. And we don't want this negativity going into the new season. You want to be positive, you want to be optimistic, you want to be looking forward to seeing new signings, and seeing what we can do in the Cups again, what we can do in the Champions League. And this shit show just needs to be parked. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. I'm just going to run out now, do some last minute bits and bobs of jobs. Hopefully have a great time. Probably have a drink or two on the flight, to be honest. There's no driving to be done, so it's all taxis and this, that and the other. And then, yeah, a nice 2 weeks of sun, hopefully. And reading, fingers crossed, about a few signings at Newcastle United. Yeah, subscribe, follow all our social media channels. And in the meantime, take care, keep it tuned, and I'll speak to you later.